on a regular basis. Two very special guests out of the Microsoft DC area focused on our government customers. Roxy and Rima, I'm going to give you very brief introductions because I won't be able to do it justice. But Roxy is on our CSM staff, and I've worked with her on a couple of customers, and it's always a pleasure because I know that what she is doing to help her customers is helping advance our government in their ability to do their work on a daily basis. Rima, similarly, working on the government side, is from the Teams engineering side. And I enjoy working with Rima because she tells me when things are coming, and it's wonderful. Always the question we have with our government customers is, when do we get this feature? And Rima's the person I know with the answers.
You know, they have a roadmap for that, right?
They do, and that is often the answer, actually. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And before we kick off, Dan, would you like to add anything to today's intro?
I'm excited to see Rima and Roxy go head-to-head with the closeout of Ignite. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for sharing your knowledge. We're all about having more knowledge and real-life experiences shared out with the community. For those that can't make it today, we're excited to share this all out on YouTube as well. So really do appreciate you guys taking the time. If you do have a question during the session and you want to make certain that you're not interrupting Rima or Roxy, just raise your hand. And you can do that either with your camera turned on and raise your hand, or use that lovely little button to raise your hand and get Jay's attention.
All right. Thank you. Ladies, I turn it over to you.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here. 1 second. Make sure we do it a different way. Sorry, 1 second. Have it queued up, I swear. Here we go. All right, can folks see the screen? Perfect. Okay, awesome. Sweet. Okay, well, I'm Rima. Roxy, did you kind of want to kick things off? My partner in crime here.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from. I'm Roxy, and that's Rima. We are going to talk to you today about 3 easy ways to enable cross-agency collaboration in Microsoft Teams. This presentation really it was actually honestly born from a lot of our experiences working with customers together, and some of the pain points and the feedback that we kept getting from our customers, in the sense of them not understanding how do you really communicate and collaborate across platforms together to be able to do more with each other, as far as some of the things that they've been tasked to do to serve their customers. So I'm excited that you're joining us today. We've got an awesome presentation teed up. I'm going to kick things off with a little bit more about me. So Rima, if you want to go to the next slide. And then Rima will introduce herself, and then we'll get into the presentation. So for those who are not familiar with me, my name is Roxy Ndebumadu. I am a customer success manager here at Microsoft. I've been here for about 3 years. I also have the pleasure of being elected in the state of Maryland. So that gives me a kind of a unique and keen insight into the federal government, unlike the way that some other people have. I just have a different perspective because I am a customer of Microsoft myself as well. So one of my favorite quotes is, there's no passion to be found in playing small and settling for a life that's less than the one that you're capable of living. And I really believe that to be true, and it exhibits everything that I am and everything that I do in my life, because it's always about being able to push people to get the fullness out of the experience or out of life. I do that as an elected council member in the state of Maryland. I do that as a customer success manager focusing on civilian government, and specifically focusing on our legislative and courts kind of bodies. So those mainly tend to be my customers, like House of Reps, U.S. Senate, U.S. courts, education, like those kind of customers that are using our collaborative platform in a different type of way to really meet their needs and their use cases. So feel free to add me on LinkedIn or follow me on Twitter. I'm quite a chatty one, so I look forward to getting to know a lot of you. You're up.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love your pictures here on your bio slide, Roxy. Like, It just gives me chills. It's so awesome. And I love the fact that you wore a purple dress the day you met Secretary Carson. That's amazing.
Had to rep teams, of course.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. All right. I just clicked the slide. Come on, go. All right, there we go. It went. Okay, hi folks. My name is Rima Reyes. I work for Teams Engineering. I started in Teams Engineering actually 2 years ago. It's been a crazy ride since. I essentially, in my role, really kind of oversee all of federal and DoD in terms of teams. So I'm very focused on the gov industry. I actually grew up in gov. So my whole entire career has really been focused around the federal and intel space. And I know it sounds cheesy, but I always say that I love gov, which, okay, is weird, I know, but I was born and raised in the DC area. My dad works for NASA. Like, you know, our local news is national news. You can't not get swept in the whole, you know, process of it all. And, you know, my first career actually was working at Northrop Grumman. So I worked as a contractor there, supporting a very large agency. And then before I joined Microsoft, I worked at the White House, and I had a really cool kind of experience working for the Situation Room, working for the National Security Council. And I got to see the beauty of government in the sense of I worked next to the brightest minds like on the planet. And I was just awestruck in terms of how committed and how much of themselves these people give to government. And I've seen that throughout my entire career, really, in all forms of government. And so that's why I'm kind of really passionate about the space, just because of the selflessness that people give to our government agencies, like Roxy. I mean, come on, she's like numero uno example here, just for the good of others. And so that just makes me warm and fuzzy inside. My favorite quote is, "Be yourself, everyone else is already taken." I'm sure if you met in person, you'd be like, she's the same person. Like, there's really no difference. So what you see is what you get. I'm basically a wiki. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that I started off in SharePoint. So I do still have like a huge love for SharePoint, but I switched to Teams 2 years ago. So the both of them together is really kind of where I tend to find my like hybrid personality. And then last but not least, my dog Levi, who is clearly sleeping on a mountain of pillows. He is an important part of this process and is triggered by the words GCC, GCC high, or DoD. So, you know. All right, so today we're going to kind of cover a couple of things. Our first agenda item is going to be around mission-focused collaboration principles. Roxy's going to really dive into that, especially with her experience in the space, both through her job that she has through City Council as well as through Microsoft. And then we're going to dive into the 3 feature areas of cross-agency collaboration in Microsoft Teams. And, you know, with every customer that we talk to, you know, there's a lot of like, hey, how do I do this or how do I do that? So we're going to try to go through some scenarios, focusing on chat, meetings, and then Teams itself. And then finally, we're going to cover governance, because we know we love, you know, everybody loves governance, right? And then resources to take away with you in the end. All right.
Awesome. Great overview, Rima. And I'm so happy that you mentioned all of the things that you mentioned, and you talked about Levi. Levi is amazing if you guys ever get to meet him. So, empowering people today. When we talked about in the very beginning how we came up with this presentation, we talked a lot with our customers and we saw a lot of their pain points, a lot of the things that they were experiencing. When you think about traditional government today, some of the ways that they communicate or some of the ways that they do things or some of the problems that they face, most people aren't aware of those problems. Some people don't understand that the barriers between different departments create for a meaningless communication experience or difficult communication experiences. Some people don't fully know that a lot of our federal government still use paper type processes. They still use a lot, I'm pretty sure most of you know, a lot of legacy systems. Sometimes the difficulties that they face finding and accessing information. I know me, when I reach out to our city and I ask for information, it takes them days to get back to me. Some people don't really understand that it's a struggle for the federal government to stay connected when they're working remotely, mainly because this is not something that they're used to. That connectivity and that collaboration is not something that they're used to. Traditionally in our federal government, most people are used to kind of sitting at their desk, and if they need something or if they need to work with someone, they'll walk over to the other desk, or maybe they'll call them on the telephone and things like that. So most of them are not really used to this experience of working remotely and still having to make collaboration work for them. The last part, protecting the information. That's a top priority for our federal government. So when they look at a lot of the solutions that are out there, some of them fall short. Some of them don't meet the mark on what they actually need to do when you talk about protecting sensitive information and being able to collaborate with other entities or other governments or other, I guess you would say, customers, to be able to do what they need to do. So these are the challenges that face our federal government that we have to take into account to be able to help them understand, how do you collaborate effectively across the board and promote that cross-agency collaboration. Rima, can you go to the next slide, please? I can't emphasize enough how important digital transformation is. When you think about our federal government, you think about the massive opportunity that we all have and they have when it comes to serving their customers, because I mean, we're all technically customers of the federal government. Let's be honest, we are. So, but you think about the opportunity that they have to serve their customers and serve us in a different type of way. When you think about your tax dollars and what it's contributing to and the experience that you want to have, the reason why that's so important is because all of that is driven by digital transformation. All of that is driven by technology and how we actually meet the needs of society. When you do have digital transformation in a different type of way that promotes a certain level of collaboration and promotes a certain level of togetherness, you have improved satisfaction. We know this. You have higher operational efficiency. You also have increased employee engagement. And that morale is so, so important, because when you're interacting with the federal government to get whatever services it is that you need, you want to interact with somebody that's happy. You want to have a positive experience. You want to deal with somebody that really gets your needs and can empathize to be able to get you what you need. So this is why digital transformation is more important now more than ever, especially since we are living in a remote and connected environment. Rima, if you want to go to the next slide. So who's communicating with the U.S. government? A lot of us don't necessarily know what that full circle looks like. So Rima and I did a great job of drawing that out. Because when you think about it, you have federal agencies. Follow me on this circle real quick. Federal agencies who work with state government, who work with county government, who work with municipal government, that's me, who work with our United States military, then work with our defense contractors, work with outside organizations. So that could be your outside vendors like the FCC and Comcast or Verizon, or that can be housing and urban development and different types of developers, or United States Senate or United States House of Representatives, or that can be different United States persons like you and I. So these are all of the people that our federal government is communicating with that need to have efficient collaboration across the board of all of these entities. Rima, you want to go to the next one?
Yeah, I wanted to add something. So Roxy, do you mind talking a little bit about like a quick personal story? I know you'd mentioned housing and urban development, but just your experience even on Bowie City Council, like what your interaction is with other government agencies?
Yeah, so when you think about it, just I'll give it from a customer perspective and also from my perspective. When you think about municipal government, we work very, very closely with a lot of different vendors like Verizon, like Comcast, like different types of developers, like different types of entities that are servicing our community that have different things in our community. So that could be with your bigger corporations like the Safeways or the commercial, I guess you would say, type of companies. We work very, very closely with that. But on the other side, we also work very closely with our federal agencies. I work closely with our congressmen, our U.S. senators, our state governor, Larry Hogan, in this case, that's the state of Maryland, working really closely and being able to have meetings with them or being able to kind of have that collaboration experience to advocate for what it is that the citizens of Bowie actually need. Then when you think about housing and urban development, earlier this year, housing and urban development had something called a community block grant. So a lot of municipal governments and a lot of county governments and state governments had got these community block grants to be able to meet the needs of their citizens in the time of COVID. So this block grant was dedicated for you to be able to kind of recuperate your lost costs or the lost expenditures that you had to spend to keep the community safe when it came time for COVID. So that's buying protective equipment. That's making sure the hospitals in your area are good to go and they're safe and they're well equipped to handle everything that's happening in the world. So with that, when you think about just those small examples, those are all different people that we're always having to communicate with all the time. Our grant writers have to communicate with housing and urban development or work with them or collaborate with them in some type of form to be able to understand the types of grants that are out there and the types of grants that we can go for. Same thing with our police force and our U.S. military sometimes, or our FBI. They have to work very, very closely together when it comes to dealing with certain crimes or investigations that are going on in our area. So that's what that cross collaboration looks like, that I don't think a lot of people understand the clear picture and of what comes to mind in the sense of how deeply connected and how much we actually do have to collaborate on a day-to-day basis to make sure that the world continues to revolve.
Yeah, I'll add to this. The other piece to this is also when we have these mission focused or mission kind of centric scenarios where people's lives are at stake, especially with a lot of the civil unrest that we have going on. That's really key. We've seen, I mean, this is cheesy to say this, but teams like literally help save lives, and so they've supported government in that sense. To actually, to help Americans either come back to the United States if they're stranded overseas because of COVID, or even helping, law enforcement locally kind of communicate with each other to understand, hey, what's going on. So, that's really important. And I think it's so huge, especially what you do. And by the way, Roxy, I didn't say this before, but thank you for your service. I know it's a labor of love, working in municipal government. It's like the most intense like volunteer job like I've ever seen. So, and that's kind of, I think, like both you and I like kind of met and like said, okay, yeah, like we have like a deep understanding for this. You probably obviously more so than I do, but I also have a deep respect and admiration for you for doing that. And that's part of the reason of why I do this, and I'm sure for you too. So just thank you. Just side note.
Thank you.
All right. So did you want to kind of kick us off, and then I'll kind of do the deep dive?
Yeah, I'll kick this off. I think there are 3 core areas of Microsoft Teams that really just don't come to mind when most people think about it. So most of our federal government agencies, when we're interacting with them and they're looking for, okay, what does cross collaboration look like? I mean, we have Teams, but I'm sure I'll just be able to pop in an email and just send a Teams message. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a deep understanding of the 3 main ways that you can actually get that done, which is when it comes to chat, that's external access. A lot of people who are your typical end users, and I don't mean that in any way, I just mean like as an end user, these are things that you genuinely wouldn't know. You have to enable external access. Or when you think about meetings and callings, anonymous join, having that feature enabled, or when you think about Teams, guest access, that's a prime example of how a municipal government or a state government is able to work with the housing and urban development, or able to work with I guess you would say, United States House of Representatives. Those are things like guest access that make those things available, as well as external access. So I'll let Rima go deeper in these areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this kind of came about, like, to kind of go back to also how we kind of came about this is that, well, you and I talk all the time because we work together, but then we started realizing we're like, okay, there's this big need around how agencies can communicate with other agencies. And then we're like, okay, like how do we simplify it? Because I think you and I both started realizing, like, even in Microsoft, like there was a lot of confusion, like what is what? And then you add the layer of like government clouds on top of that, which is like, okay, we already, are confused about what is what in there anyways. I'm taking my Microsoft hat off, obviously, by saying that. But I think I'm all about kind of clarity and like dispelling rumors and like, I love sharing information that I have. I'm not the type of person who's like, okay, I'm just going to keep this for myself because, I'm gaining something out of it. I'm always like, I'm going to push that information out as much as I can. And so then when you and I started talking and we're like, okay, all these people are having these issues, like understanding this, I think you and I were kind of like, we have to do something about it. Like, let's talk about like what is reality. And that's in Teams right now. The reality is really around, external access being, the one-on-one chat, the meetings piece where you can allow other people to come into your meetings, and then guest access for that like really rich like or agency to agency collaboration scenario. So, all right, without further ado, I will dive into this. All right. Okay, so let's start with chat. So chatting with other agencies, again, we call this external access. I also like seeing this as like, if a government agency is very risk averse, this is a great way for them to dip their toes in the sand or the water, so to speak. Like just to, hey, I'm going to see if it's cold or hot. I want to know what the water temperature is like. This is a great way to do that, and it's a great entry point because it's limited in scope, which is good. So you kind of know what you're getting out of the box, and there's only so much that can be done here, which is again good. So when we talk about external access, it's really about having a lightweight way for one agency to have a one-on-one chat with a user from another agency. And what's great about this is that it doesn't include the sharing of files. So I know, like, especially when we work with NARA, I know I had to like deal a lot with NARA when I worked at White House. Files are kind of like our bread and butter in government. And so keeping that close to our vest is important. But with chat, it's really just text. So we're not talking about sharing files. So there's a little bit of a less of a risk in that sense when you enable external access. And so that's really key. So I've known, like, even for emergency scenarios where we've had like recently storms and things like that, or even setting up like COVID hospitals, this one-on-one chat was really key to kind of get something out to somebody else when you didn't necessarily know their cell phone number. You couldn't text them, obviously. You also wanted to have this chat for like record keeping, so you can retain these chats, you can archive them too. And so having the ability for like, one agency to just reach out and say, hey, I'm going to chat this other person, another agency to check on something or get something done was huge. And then also being able to call, just via like the Teams to Teams client too is also really, really big as well. And so I have two screenshots here, and they're actually showing a GCC user initiating a chat with a commercial user. Haha, what does that mean? Okay. So I'm going to dispel some rumors. I'll dispel the rumor first since I gave that little teaser. So today, GCC users can communicate with commercial users in external access, and there's more. GCC high users can also do external access one-on-one chat with a GCC user or a commercial user, and that traverses across. So basically, commercial GCC and GCC high users can federate, like do external access chat with each other, which is, I mean, huge, right? And that's not explicitly like listed out anywhere. Some of it's for security reasons, obviously, too. But since I'm representing Gov from the team's perspective, I just wanted to kind of lay that out because we have a ton of agencies already in GCC High who are really utilizing this feature. Just being able to traverse those clouds with chat is a huge game changer. So that's something, a big win. DoD, by the way, since they have their very special policies, because it's DoD, DoD right now can federate with other DoD entities. They just can't federate outside of that cloud just because of the DISA, policies, which DISA manages DoD and provides, oversight and accreditation. So they say no, and we have to follow what they say. So how do you kind of make external access enabled? And so the key thing here is to go to the Microsoft Teams Admin Center, make sure that toggle is set to on, and also determine which orgs you want to communicate with, right? Like make a list, say, hey, like on a, any given season or day, this is who we talk to. And then reach out to those other orgs and make sure, they're also in line with configuring external access the way you are, because it's a two-way trust. So you want to make sure that they're on board with it as well. And just something to note that if no domains are entered in that admin center screenshot, which I have listed here, that means it's kind of open to whatever agency also has, kind of the same configuration or is configured to communicate with you. So if you want it restricted, you can add or you can allow or block domains. But if you kind of want to leave it open for now, you can absolutely just leave it blank and then allow just any sort of external access. Great, go to the next slide. So meetings, all right. So chat was easy because chat's like just very, straight up, it's just text, it's very basic. Meetings is always is a fun one, and meetings are also very pivotal to mission critical or emergency scenarios. And so when we talk about meetings, we want to have the ability for other entities to join our meetings, just like we did with Skype. And so this is called anonymous join in Teams, which, okay, I'm going to take off my Microsoft hat again. I hate that term because anonymous just resonates with like so many like bad things in life, culturally, I guess too. So ignore that fact. It's not truly anonymous, but we call it anonymous join, and really it's a setting in the Teams Admin Center that you can turn on, and it allows anyone with or without a Teams account to join your meeting. You can have a policy where you force them to enter a name and things like that before they join, so you know who's entering. And then you can also have policies to say, I want to review who's coming into the meeting before they come in. So that's also key. So you can kind of configure it based upon your agency's security needs. But the cool thing about this too is that it also does not allow the sharing of files like out of the box. So again, like even if you allow anonymous join, you're just allowing the capability of people to come into a meeting. That's it, right? And so that's really key. If a user doesn't have a Teams account, which sometimes when you're talking to, like, let's say during an emergency, you're talking to like a goods and services organization, or let's say you're like an agency that provides like benefits to senior citizens or something like that. And let's say that senior citizen doesn't have a Teams account. They can join that meeting. They just type in their name, before they join that meeting. But if they only have a mobile phone, all they have to have is the Teams app. They don't have to be registered or signed in. They can still join that meeting that was sent to them, the meeting link via email from the Teams mobile app. So that's really cool. And then obviously we always encourage, if folks have a Teams login to, sign into Teams before they join a meeting for a richer meeting experience. So that's just key.
Can I ask a quick question, or should I wait until the end? I have a question about the slide.
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to take a question now. Yeah.
So the sharing of files. So if I have a mix of attendees, I have one internal organization, couple external. So if somebody from external organization joins, so sharing of files basically blocked for everybody, even for the people who are internal, or is it on role-based so it won't be allowed for external, but if there are some internal people, will they still see it or no?
Yeah, it's the latter. So anybody internal or anybody who's like, configured to be able to share files with your organization, if they're part of the meeting, they would be able to share files. But if it's somebody who's not really recognized as being like a trusted user within your organization's policies, they wouldn't be able to share files.
But will that person be able to read the files if I'm sharing something within that meeting? If the external, can they like read only it, or they won't even be able to open it?
They wouldn't even see it. Yeah, they wouldn't see it.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Great, I'll go to the next slide. So how do we make this happen? So you want to make sure in the Teams Admin Center that you turn that anonymous join toggle on. And then you also want to configure participants and guests. There's like a set of meeting policies that you want to configure, which is what I mentioned before about, hey, I want to review before like participants and external guests kind of come into my meeting. I want to know who they are. Do I want to allow chat or not allow chat? There's a couple of things that you can configure here. So it's really important to make sure that you kind of talk this over with your leadership and say, hey, like what do we want here? What's the experience? And then my rumor dispelling section, right, about GovClouds. So GCC and GCC High organizations today can enable anonymous join to allow outside users to join their meetings. So meaning if a GCC High customer has a meeting, if they turn on anonymous join, people from a commercial entity or GCC entity can still join those meetings, and vice versa. So GCC High users can still join the meetings of those in commercial, and they can sign in too, which is really cool. It's just through the web interface, but they can sign in, which is awesome. The only part of this that doesn't apply is DoD. So DoD can allow anonymous join for other DoD agencies. It's just that folks can't come in if they're not, from a DoD enabled machine. So an anonymous join essentially in DoD means anybody within DoD, just not anybody outside of DoD. So.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So, for example, so I've seen this meeting. This is like for the meetings. Is the org wide, or I know in the yesterday's Ignite event they were showing all this that you can do policies in bulk, and is it all available in GCC? So can I do, for example, for specific team? Can I push this meeting policies for only a specific team, or all this will be applied to basically to all the teams in the organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. So meeting settings is going to apply to everyone in the organization. Meeting policies can be determined based upon a set of users or a group of users. Absolutely.
So you can override it, right? So it's for specific, so for everybody, I will not allow them to bypass the lobby. For one specific team, I can say, yeah, for meetings for this specific team, yes, you can just join in.
Absolutely. And we'll make this slide deck available. If you see any of like those hyperlinks, it dives into the docs page about like all of the different options that you have. Because I'm all about like, hey, I want to give people the source of the info. Because the Teams docs page is pretty massive. So like I try to like curate as much as I can to find like those like hidden nuggets to say, okay, this is really what you want to focus on. So hopefully that'll help.
Perfect. All right. Thanks.
Sure. All right, we'll dive into Teams, which is like, I don't know, the bread and butter, the best kind of like, I don't know, if I was to get like a car, this would be the Tesla of collaboration, I guess. I don't know. If people like Teslas, I don't know. So when we talk about cross-agency collab when it comes to Teams, guest access is where it's at. And guest access essentially allows a team in your organization to invite an external person, so someone from another agency, to come in to that team and share not only in your communication, so like not only the chat pieces of a team, but also the files and sometimes, the apps and stuff too. So they get a much richer like collaboration experience because they're exposed to everything all the richness that's inside of a team. And then the other like benefit or boon for a guest user into your organization is that they also get a richer experience in chat. So even in one-on-one chat, they'll have a much richer experience with people from your organization, because guest users are really considered a truly trusted, user coming in, and you as an organization who's managing that guest user has more control over what that identity can or cannot do, which is really key. And that's a big part of this. This isn't like somebody coming in like wreaking havoc, like, okay, we're just going to give them access to whatever. That's definitely not what we're talking about here. Microsoft, which is really cool, like gives you the power within the O365 admin portal, within the Azure admin portal, within Teams to kind of determine what the guest experience is like. So kind of take credence to some of the places I'm going to talk about right here in the next slide, and pay attention and say, hey, like what are the policies that we want to apply for our guest users to make it the right experience for us? And that's really, really key. And I can talk a little bit about how one gov agency, I won't say who it is, but one gov agency actually configured this, which was quite interesting, and I'll share that story. The rumor part of the slide is so guest access for Azure AD, which is a dependency for guest access in Teams. Guest access in Azure AD is available in GCC today. GCC High and DoD will have Azure AD and Teams guest access capabilities somewhere in the near future, but again, it's all dependent on the accreditation authorities. So we're kind of like working through that now to say, we know users want it, but the accreditation authorities are kind of like, like we're not really keen on that. And so we're kind of battling this fight right now to understand like what can we do in terms of guest for GCC High and DoD. But today in GCC, tenants can allow a guest user into a tenant. And so here's the guest access go-dos. And this was also like really eye-opening for me because I have a lot of agencies who kind of are very nervous about guest access because they don't know all the different points that they can configure. And so this is really a summary of the key areas that you want to take a look at. So the first thing that you want to go do is in the Azure Active Directory portal, there's something called external collaboration settings, and you want to go configure that to say, hey, like, what agencies in Azure Active Directory am I going to allow to come into my tenant? So you can approve or deny like who you want there. And then there's another setting in the M365 Admin Center to allow Microsoft 365 groups to allow guest members to access group content. So there's like 2 little checkboxes you want to make sure are checked there. And then you want to also configure external file sharing settings in the SharePoint Admin Center. So there's like 2 dials. You can dial them up or dial them down, like depending on how much you want to share. And something to keep in mind: external file sharing settings can apply to SharePoint in OneDrive. You can configure both in there too. And then your last piece is that you want to turn the toggle on for guest access in the Teams Admin Center. And so something really key, I'll talk about the story here. So one of our largest customers in GCC took a really unique approach to this, which I thought was really fascinating. So what they did was, in the beginning, they were like, okay, we only want to allow these 3 other agencies as guests into the tenant. Like, these are 3 trusted agencies. But their users were complaining because they had to go, do very mission critical things during COVID that were time was of the essence. And so they needed to be able to chat and communicate and collaborate with anybody. And so, the leadership kind of heard that need and said, okay, we got to change how we look at this. And so then they decided to allow guest access for any agency or organization, even if somebody had a Gmail account, which I was like, what? Okay, that's cool. Okay, whatever. Very shocking, very forward leaning. But here's where they made the difference, was around the files. So they actually said, hey, when it comes to external file sharing, we only want to allow those 3 trusted agencies. We don't want to allow file sharing with, every, Tom and Harry, whoever's in the outside world. We want to just allow it to those 3 agencies we trust, because files are our bread and butter. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. I'm like, well, what else would a guest user really gain access to? And they're like, listen, like, if we can add a guest into a team, they can see the entire conversation history. It's a richer, like, conversation experience, number one. And number two, they would have access to certain things like Planner or other apps that don't necessarily have files behind them, but still have, some sort of content that is necessary to kind of get, something stood up or something delivered or something completed. And I was like, oh, that's really fascinating. So they split kind of how they looked at the identity of bringing in the identity and who can actually see the files. And I thought that was a really unique way of tackling the scenario. And they still have it today. It's been working for them really well, and their users are quite happy, actually. So that's really awesome. All right, I will go through governance really quick, because I love governance. Who doesn't? Especially coming from the SharePoint world. A lot of bedtime reading for governance documents that were 20 pages long. That's definitely not what this is, but something just to think about when you're looking at governance. So and when you're thinking about bringing another agency into your environment, make sure you create a retention policy for Teams chat and channel messages, and also for files, right? Like, you want to make sure that you are adhering to your agency's legal guidelines around retaining records and content. Another key piece is creating an expiration policy for Teams. So you want to make sure that Teams, after like their end of life, kind of acquiesce and kind of close out. And what happens to that data is up to you. But just for cleaning up and kind of making sure that, hey, we only have the data available that's really, really needed at that point in time. That's really key. A lot of gov agencies like to turn on the audit log, just in case if something nefarious happens. Even for their own internal users, they use the audit log to kind of chase down those actions. And review meeting policies. That's really key. I talked a little bit about that before, but you want to kind of review like what the meeting policy is for an external participant or guest coming into your meetings. Another golden nugget I found is the external versus guest access chart. That link in there is actually a chart comparing the two. And that's one of my golden nuggets that I try to share with other people, because it tells you kind of what you get and what you don't get with either. And I think that's really key when folks are kind of trying to make a decision as to what is what. A lot of times people will actually share that link with their leadership to get buy-in and also to clarify on things. And then finally, you want to review your documentation around setting up your external identities in Azure AD by either allowing or denying guest invitations to certain domains. And that's that was kind of alluding to that story I was telling before. You can either allow or block certain domains from coming in as guests. It doesn't have to be like the whole world, right? So it's up to you. We give you a lot of control so that you can determine, again, what's the right practice for your agency, because no one agency is the same, trust me. All right, Roxy, do you want to take it off with resources?
So we've got a ton of resources for you, but the first thing that we want to shout out is to join the public sector tech community. You will find best practices, you will find a bunch of new features, tips and tricks, information directly from Microsoft. You get to ask us questions, you get to ask your peers questions, you get to join a lot of our monthly events, some Ask Me Anything, and get recognized. Who doesn't love to be recognized? So please join our public sector tech blog. It's where a ton of information is. And Rima, myself, and a bunch of other Microsoft colleagues do go there monthly, and we do write blogs on updated features, tips and tricks, and things like that. So make sure that you join ak.ms/pubsecblog. And I'm sorry, go ahead, Rima.
Oh, no, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've got a few other resources too, especially ones that have kind of come out after Ignite, that I'm more than happy to, I can put them in the slides so that when they get sent out, everybody would get them, but I'm also willing to put them in the chat. So I can do both. It's up to Jay and company folks. So.
Thanks, Rima. I think probably in the slide would be helpful so everyone would be able to kind of access it afterwards.
Sure.
I guess we can turn it over to the audience now and see if anyone has any questions about today's presentations or want to share some of the ways that you've seen some of this stuff come to fruition in your customer space or in your space in general. We'd love to hear more.
No, that was great because it sort of outlined the, okay, you want to talk to these other agencies. Everybody does. And that was a great way to sort of walk it through. Like, if you want chat, do this. If you want meetings, do that. And I liked the story about configure it for yours. Flip it. Just because you give them guest access doesn't mean they get the files.
Yeah.
So that was good. Right. And because, as you pointed out, all the agencies are going to want, they live in their little castles for reasons, for legal purposes and divisions at the department level. But we still want to be able to talk to each other, and that was good. So thank you.
I had a question to ask some clarification around the external collaboration settings in Azure Active Directory. So I'm seeing for the first time this enable email one-time passcode for guests feature. And I'm assuming that, based on the info box, but I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly, that it no longer requires an external guest to go register for a Microsoft account with their email address. Is that correct?
That's a good question. Honestly, I haven't gone through like all of the Azure AD guest experiences, but I know when I've been invited to other tenants, having that one-time email passcode, because as a guest I'll be notified, hey, here's the passcode that you need to sign up for that org. I will say, as a future state in Teams specifically, we're looking to have a much more frictionless join experience when it comes to group chat or even Teams or anything like that. Where we're looking to kind of implement some of the more lightweight features of just using your phone number or just using a join link for a team. So we're kind of experimenting with that, and we're partnering obviously with Azure AD to kind of figure out, hey, what works from a security perspective, and what can Teams control versus what can Azure control. So you'll see some changes here probably in the next year or so around that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, our it's been a major holdup for us in terms of before Teams with groups even. When we invite external individuals who are overseas and English is not their first language, and we're trying to explain to them they need to go get a Microsoft account associated with their email address, and we don't control that process, and it changes frequently, so I can't even produce screenshots to say, here, click this, click this, click this. So that's kind of held up our external collaboration, and so we just don't recommend it at all. We say you could do it, but you're at your own risk in how you explain to the the person you're sharing with how to get access. So I mean, this sounds like it might solve that problem. And the same thing, because of that, we just disabled external access to Teams altogether, just because we just didn't want to deal with that problem.
Yeah, and so something just as an aside to that, we do have like Teams for Life, which is like, the personal side of Teams, where you can, use like a personal account and sign up and register for a team and share, things with your family. There is like a preview link for that. I'm happy to find that and share that to folks if people are interested. It's free.
Does that work besides on the phone? First, as far as I can tell, it only works on your phone, correct?
No, it should actually work in the desktop client as well.
Interesting. Yes, I'd be very interested in that, Rima.
Yeah, of course. I'll send that up.
Hey, Rima, we got another question in the chat. I'll read it to you. It's from Rob. He says, I just rolled off a DSH project. Their Coast Guard is on a .mil network. The rest of DHS is .gov. We cannot use Teams, Power Apps, or SharePoint Online because of the different networks and clouds. Any suggestions?
Yes, I am familiar with this scenario quite a bit because I'm working with all those agencies. I know Roxy's colleagues are too. So Coast Guard is in the process of deploying Teams, and so we're kind of working through that right now. And unfortunately in DoD, because things take a lot longer to accredit and approve, and also the DoD environment doesn't face the public internet. So we have to actually, rebuild and rewire up a lot of our services in those clouds. It takes us also longer to build too. And that's why, like, Power Apps and stuff is not there yet, but it's coming to DoD. But I know Coast Guards, they're literally, we meet, weekly, and they're looking to enable Teams for the org as much as possible. So last I checked, I believe you can access the web link for Teams. The client, I think, is what they're kind of trying to figure out right now of deployment. So I don't know if that helps.
Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, and let me add this too, Rob. One other thing. So the rest of DHS, yes, is on GCC. So just an FYI, the GCC identity store and the DoD identity store don't talk to each other, don't see each other, don't know about one another, and that is a requirement that the federal government has put upon us. So that's why, like, you could have a DHS account and you could have a Coast Guard account, but they would be completely separate, and there's really no kind of collaboration between the two or sync between the two for security reasons and because of accreditation reasons. So, all right, good. He said thanks. Sweet. Perfect. Awesome. And I just posted some resource links in the chat window. We have the user voice. So if there's things that you're looking to see or you would like to see in Teams in Gov, please submit a user voice items. We take those very, very seriously. We have actually a person whose full-time job is to review user voice, and they track and they catalog all of that. So it's a thing we take very, very seriously in Teams. And then we also have the Teams roadmap. That's the public-facing roadmap. You can filter on your GovCloud. If you're an admin and you're looking for like a very much more detailed experience about what's coming, make sure you look at your message center posts in your admin center. That's going to be like the engineering gold of what's coming into your tenant. So just take a look at that. We also have the Gov Adoption Toolkit, which is our IKEA online catalog of like anything adoption for Gov. I love it because you can like flip through the pages and stuff. It's pretty cool. And then friends and family, the thing I was talking about before, that there's a link to sign up for there.
So Rima, I've got two quick questions for you. One is about one of the links you posted, Teams for Friends and Family. Mm-hmm. Awesome resource if folks haven't had a chance to check it out. Curiosity when that might actually hit the desktop app.
Oh yeah, so somebody else was just saying that. So I know I see it in my desktop app, and maybe because I'm engineering, it's a little bit earlier for me, but that should be hitting the desktop app sometime soon. I don't know of a roadmap date for that. Okay. But that should hit desktop. So we've already seen, first kind of inklings of what that looks like. So
cool. Hopefully there's lots more emojis that are available. in terms of what you were just mentioning about, to be able to see capability that is rolling out to your tenant. I know a lot of us out there work on projects related to Teams and Microsoft 365 and Azure, but we don't always have global admin access, so we don't always actually have access to that message center. Outside of buying donuts for whoever the actual global administrator is there any way to, I don't know, get access to like what I'll refer to as app owners to things like that, or any notion of that, or is that more considered a, I'll call it a communications rollout sort of thing that we just need to remind the actual global admins they need to share more?
Well, we always need to remind global admins to share more, but yeah. So here's what I've seen other agencies do, and there's a reason why not all of the message center posts are going to be in the public roadmap, because some of those message center posts are going to be unique per tenant and per their configuration, and so that's really key. So not everything's going to make the public roadmap. We're getting better about making sure that the major things are gonna show up in the public roadmap. So there's that. But what I've seen other agencies do is they've actually set up a way to export those message center items into Planner. There's actually a button to do that in the GCC Admin Center. You can export those message center posts into Planner, and then have that Planner be a part of a team that maybe all of the other, like, tier 1 or tier 2 admins can see all of those new message center posts as Planner items. That's been a huge success. I've also seen organizations like dump that data into a SharePoint list and then have a Power Automate workflow go and kind of remind everybody, like, hey, this is new. And now, as of 2 weeks ago, since we have bots, adaptive cards, app templates, custom apps, sideloading of apps, like all that good stuff, you're able to actually build a bot that could, peer into a SharePoint list and, maybe pull up, like a individual chat or something with a user, notifying them, hey, like, something new has landed in the message center. So the possibilities.
Cool. Yeah, and I think what I've seen is folks, this is probably not the greatest, take screen captures and then post them up in like Teams channels or Yammer, and end users kind of read through those and they're like, what does that even mean? So that usually is not the greatest thing in the world, but I think your suggestion about putting them in a Planner and making that Planner more accessible to everyone is probably, or to like tier 1, tier 2 admins, probably a good recommendation on that. I just know that, to your point, because they are specific to that tenant, the timelines for something that was in the roadmap may not actually show up as quickly. So yeah, no, I think it's just the roadmap. Occasionally we'll say, this is rolling out now, and it's the thought of, yes, and there are 10,632 tenants in my area. I may not actually see it before they do. So, okay, no, that's cool.
So just take a screenshot of GCC, and you'll see there's like a Planner syncing button. This is actually a GCC tenant, and it has that.
Cool.
That's really key. Yeah. That's, I think, the best way to do it, personally.
And then it's just helping people understand what SharePoint 2010 workflows actually mean. But yeah.
That reminder is terrifying a lot of people, by the way.
Oh, I know. I saw it pop up in one of my tenants this morning, and I smiled and cringed at the same time. So
I used to be the queen of SharePoint 2010 workflows, like way back in the day, and man, I get it. I love the Clippy Clippy GIF. It's awesome. Oh, Roxy, I think you're on mute, dear.
There's another question that says I can change on Teams on my phone. I can. I'm laughing because you will know why I'm laughing. On Teams on my phone, I can change domains instantly. Is that capability coming to desktop Teams?
It is. I swear it is. We hear that a lot. I think it's actually like one of our number one Like, why does it take so long?
I'm one of the loudest peoples about this, by the way. I'm like, why is this taking so long?
No. Yeah, I wish I had a better answer for that. We've got a team of developers that develop the desktop app, and then we've got a team of developers that develop the mobile app. Sometimes things are much easier to accomplish in mobile because, the mobile view is going to be a more limited, a limited aspect or limited viewpoint of what you get in Teams, right? Because it's mobile. But yes, that is coming. That's our number one thing. We're actively working on it, and that's a big piece of improving the user experience. We have several thousand folks in Teams engineering. And these people, man, they work so hard. It's amazing, and I have the joy of like working with some of the smartest people on the planet on that team. It's truly amazing. And our whole goal is obviously always to get user feedback, and then make that into reality. And I don't know if you've noticed, maybe Roxy, you might be able to tell too, but in terms of other Microsoft apps, we've really innovated quite quickly. And I think part of that is because we have that process where we're constantly like, users are telling us what they want, and we develop based upon user feedback. And that's huge. That's really, really huge. And that's part of my role too, like, getting user feedback and kind of saying, hey, like, what are our customers looking for? And let's quantify what that looks like and what that means. And how do we take Teams to the next level for our customers? And again, that whole circle of life around product feedback and development. So maybe they should use these. Trust me, they do. We all do. People know, like, my email is like ridiculous. I don't even like email anybody anymore. It's just
So kind of on that with the being able to change domains instantly, I know on my mobile app, I think I've got 2 notifications from other tenants that I'm a part of as well that will not go away. So it's kind of the reverse problem where it's like, oh, neat. It shows me there's a notification. Why won't that notification go away? I've seen that message.
Yeah, you have that unlinking, so basically we call it context switching in Teams, where you switch different tenants. Yep. Yeah, so we're thinking about how we're going to also have users easily like deregister from tenants that they don't want to be a part of anymore. Because I'm a part of like 20 different tenants. I'm like, this is so annoying. Like, I also want it to go. So that is coming. There's a lot of changes coming. Trust me, a lot.
Well, I mean, Jay likes to add you to tenants every week, so that's probably why.
Jay, we got to talk about this. And Roxy, I know, we should highlight also some of the great work that you're doing too from a Microsoft perspective. So Roxy is literally the rock star in terms of, carrying large customers, large federal agencies into Teams and doing like helping with not only understanding the project scope of what it takes to get to Teams, but also the adoption side of it, and how to make Teams sticky. I mean, she's somebody I lean on, she's somebody I trust heavily, and I know you have a certain subset of customers, but in terms of this space, in terms of adoption and truly understanding, I feel like you're really the SME in this area, and so I really want to highlight that if folks have questions around adoption too.
Yeah, thank you, Rima. I appreciate that. Even we're not going to go in a complimentary war on giving each other compliments because that's where I was headed. But no, she's absolutely right. I've worked with a ton of customers across civilian, even though I have specific ones now, but I've worked with a ton of them, especially even our SI communities who are interfacing with the DoD. So I've worked a ton with Perspecta as well as Mantech, as well as CACI, sorry, not CACI, CACI, and a couple of others who are interfacing. So definitely, if anyone has any questions about adoption or about how to really get the most out of Teams when it comes to either third-party apps or whatever that looks like, feel free to reach out or feel free to ask, because we've worked with a ton of customers in our Civ space as well as our SI space.
Yeah, 3P apps like App Points app.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
We're doing
all right, cool. Well, if nobody has any more questions or anything to add, I am so happy that you all joined today. Thank you so much for listening to me and Rima go on and on and on about how to effectively collaborate within Microsoft Teams. We were so excited to join you, and this was an awesome group with great, great and thoughtful questions. And I'm happy that you guys felt comfortable asking our questions, because that's really what we need. Like, even that kind of user experience with the mobile app versus the desktop app, like, these are the things that we need to hear so that we can keep pressing forward and know what's a priority to use, that so that becomes a priority to us. So thank you so much. Rima, anything to add?
No, thank you. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool. So with that, Roxy, Rima, we do appreciate you all coming out and hanging out with us. For anybody that's interested, 2 weeks from now, we're going to have a session with regard to good old SharePoint news and how to help get folks engaged and from an employee perspective. Great speaker with Susan Hanley will be joining us. So if you're interested, you can go sign up through Meetup. The link's out there. We look forward to having folks join in there. Roxy and Rima, we really do appreciate you all coming out and sharing everything about Teams with us. Cross collaboration is definitely key. And Roxy, thank you for everything you're doing from a public service perspective as well. I know it's got to be a bit of juggling in the world that we live in. So thank you for that. But anyway, with all that, thank you all so much, and we hope you have a terrific Thursday.
Thanks, everyone.